Bitcoin is not a currency. It's not a security. It is a property. It is not, and it is not in and of itself a centralized entity. Everything else in the ecosystem either looks like a currency and it gets regulated. If it's currency, like Tether or Circle, right? Then we're either going to regulate it like a security, and you're going to have to be a public company, and you're going to have to make full disclosures on a quarterly basis. Or like a mutual fund. That's the best you could hope for. And the more extreme is you need an FDIC charter license, right? And then the debate will be, can it be a state bank or can it be a federally chartered bank? So we know that about stable coins. With regard to all the DeFi and the security tokens, I mean, they all look like they're securities, and now there's a tossling about whether there should be light securities regulation or heavier securities guidelines, and it's unclear. They didn't really define. They didn't decide anything there. What they did kind of just generally all uniformly agree on is Bitcoin is property, not to be regulated by the SEC or the Treasury or the CFTC in any way other than just saying ordinary, customary and ordinary expectations around transfer taxes, capital gains taxes, and classic asset transfer disclosures at some level. So that's my takeaway. I mean, generally, I don't know how you could be anything other than bullish about the entire asset class when you watch that, if you're a Bitcoiner.
Sure. And what are your thoughts about kind of the evolution of regulation around Bitcoin moving forward? And then I guess like kind of a, jam-pack, like a side of that question as well is like, what do you think about the trade-offs between sovereignty and regulation? Because obviously regulation is something that we're going to have to face moving forward with the asset class. But obviously kind of the, sovereign individual ethos of Bitcoin is very at the, heart of a lot of the hardcore hodlers of the asset. So what do you kind of think about some of the kind of sacrifices that will have to be made in that sense moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think that all the regulatory uncertainty right now in the political climate revolves around crypto exchanges, stable coins, and security tokens, and DeFi exchanges, and all the yield products, and all the advanced applications, right? That's where the regulatory uncertainty is, right? All the back and forth about what'll happen and when it will happen really relates to digital securities, digital exchanges, digital currencies. Bitcoin's digital property. We're not really having much in the way of serious debates around that. Like, no one's questioning whether you can take personal custody of your Bitcoin, right? That's not on the table. And so what I think in general about the crypto industry is there's 20 or 30 pretty powerful regulatory regimes, Japan, Korea, China. They're all going back and forth, and they have various degrees of view on this. And there's going to be a lot of regulatory intervention in the crypto economy in general around OTC trading. Can you trade with leverage? Can you have a 20-to-1 margin loan? Can I trade without a tax disclosure? What are the tax disclosures? Can I trade the security token without a securities disclosure? All of that's going to go on for the next 3 to 5 years. I think and if you're invested in any of those things, if you're either in the business of it, or you're issuing one, or you're owning them, then I think it's an uncertain regime. It's very risky, very complicated, and it's not clear what the answer will be, other than the fact that the U.S. will be probably the driver, and whatever the U.S. decides, Treasury, SEC, CFTC, that will probably drive 80% of the direction of the rest of the world, but not 100%. There's always going to be a bit of diversity there in views. Now, with regard to Bitcoin and property rights in general, my view there is I think Bitcoiners angst a lot about this more than they need to. There's like $750 trillion of property in this world that's owned by non-Bitcoin people that have lesser rights than the worst case for Bitcoin. Like if you conceive of, try to figure out what is the worst case for Bitcoin over the next decade. The worst case for Bitcoin might be right now, as far as I can see, it's like, if you take custody of all your Bitcoin off the exchange, you have to admit that you took it. Okay, that's like, you have to say, I wired 20 Bitcoin to myself. Okay, and there's a disclosure. That's the worst case. And now you have the Bitcoin, and you could have it at any of 100,000 counterparties. You can send it anywhere in 30 minutes, and you've got it on a hardware device, or you've got it on any device, okay? Now, I want you to think about that worst case. And now I want you to think about the best case for the equivalent amount of gold, silver, property, equity, Apple stock, government bonds, corporate bonds, collectibles, art. Now tell me, is there anything else on earth that you would rather be holding than Bitcoin that you admitted to the government that you hold? I mean, try making your building in the middle of Manhattan disappear in a boating accident, right?
That's a good one, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Happening.
It's not happening. So I think that, by the way, try making your yacht disappear in a boating accident, okay? The point really is, I think that the Bitcoin community is very smart. They're very smart, and they're very paranoid. And to paraphrase Andy Grove, only the paranoid survive. That's good. That's why I love them. I love them. I love all the Bitcoins, right? And I love the hodlers, and I really appreciate all the thought that goes into defending the network, defending the asset class. But I think from a practical point of view, right, the conclusion you come to is every other piece of property, everything else in the crypto ecosystem, everything in the non-crypto ecosystem is inferior to hold under any possible outcome than Bitcoin is right now. So the answer is, you ought to just buy Bitcoin. You ought to hold Bitcoin. You ought to tell everybody else to hold Bitcoin. And then when you consider, how do you feel about someone, all these things? Well, I mean, the answer is, this is a twisty one, it turns out that you can fight really, really hard, take the extreme anarchist libertarian point of view to protect all 6,500 cryptos, right? I should be able to create my own Dogecoin, yo-yo coin. That's a currency, that's a privacy coin, that's a security that gives yield, that I can send to anybody, right? That's the extreme libertarian view. You could take that view to protect Bitcoin. On the other hand, you might be hurting yourself, because if all those things disappeared tomorrow, the money would probably flow into Bitcoin.